I mean, age is almost a fault, almost a sin, you see. And youth is a virtue, you know. Well, you know, if middle-aged people feel that way, then they can't blame young people for contemning them and wanting to stay young. I mean, if young people say that middle-aged people are dressing absurdly, trying to imitate their youngers, are using young slang, and using facial creams and hair restorers, and doing all these undignified things to keep away the ravages of time, if they see that middle-aged people themselves fear and despise death or aging, then why should they have any respect for old people?
In the United States, 10% of the population is over the age of 65. Since the turn of the century, that proportion has doubled, and by the year 2000 will increase even more. Aging has come of age. It is now considered one of America's pervasive social problems. What is problematic is not so much whether you will get old, but where you have chosen to do it.
The old person doesn't really have much of a role in America. I would hardly call it a role, actually. Certainly the old concept of old people being wise and prudent, and the consolers, the feeling that runs all through the Bible, through classical literature in Greece and Rome, through the Middle Ages, began to dwindle, I think, with the Industrial Revolution, diminished enormously in the Victorian age, and I think in modern technological 20th century society, the old person is more of a nuisance than anything else, really.
It has been noted that the two groups historically most concerned with the aged are poets and politicians, neither of whom have done anything to appreciably help them. That may still be true for poets, but the men in the art of the possible are at least going through the motions. They'd be nuts not to.
There will be about 8.5 million more by the year 2000, and the number of aged will double to 40 million by the year 2020. And these numbers, incidentally, unlike many other types of demographic projections, are more in the nature of actual predictions. Because everyone who will be 65 and over to the year 2020 is already born. And unless there's some catastrophe, such as a thermonuclear war, they're going to be here.
The aged, as a group, are not unlike other age groups. They prefer independence to dependence, enjoy contact with other age groups, but not as much as is supposed, consider themselves comparatively healthy, and rarely see themselves as old. Since most of them, particularly those over 75, were socialized in an era imbued with the Protestant ethic, they are unalterably opposed to charity. That is somewhat unfortunate, since a third of them are considered poor, and an additional 15% near poverty. If you've ever contemplated the relative imperfections of the welfare bums, you'd be interested in the Amish. They are thoroughly capitalistic, sober, pious, and very can-do, the personification of the American way. They refuse all governmental assistance, and with old-order Amish, even decline Social Security. If an Amish man falls on hard times, the community simply closes round and helps. Unfortunately, there are some drawbacks to the Amish style. For example, they never rip off phony insurance claims, since they don't believe in buying insurance. They are opposed to suing each other, and what's worse, they don't even watch TV. It's clearly an inappropriate lifestyle for the average Americano. There had to be a better way, and we found it in the 30s.
During the Depression 1930s, for example, about a fourth of our total workforce was unemployed, with a cessation of income flow. It wasn't because they were lazy bums. It was because our economy had simply ground into a dead halt.
Thousands of unemployed men and women today are struggling to keep their homes and families together. Won't you help them by sharing your better fortune with them? Remember, sharing does not hurt like suffering.
I remember vividly when we introduced Social Security in '33, all the conservative and reactionary groups were screaming we are the road to communism, that everybody would wear a dog tag with a number on it, that people would lose their identity and their autonomy, and it was the first step toward dictatorship. Oh, that absolute ludicrous nonsense. We still don't have an adequate Social Security system, adequate medical system in this country. Of course, society has to take care of old people. Their families aren't going to do it. They should do it. They should, maybe you should help, but they're not going to. Well, but you see, if you have a capitalistic society that promotes individualism, you can't turn around and then expect them to be collectivistic. You can't then say to families, well, it's your obligation to take care of these people, you know. They say, it's my obligation to take care of me.
To my way of thinking, anyone with property, no matter what age, regardless, no matter what age, with property of a value of $35,000 and above, does not need to have other citizens pay out of their pockets for his support.
I don't like these hard and fast black and white categories. After all, public school system is socialism. Post office has been socialism. I mean, you know, and my God, we've got socialism at the top. All the big corporations practice socialism. They're given all kinds of welfare benefits by government, cost-plus contracts, fast depreciations. I mean, there's just enormous socialism at the very top level of our economy. The only place they don't want it is at the bottom where they need it the most.
Today, the computers spin out 30 million Social Security checks a month. For the retiree, Social Security is theoretically a fairly solid insurance policy. Unfortunately, that is not what it is. It is a tax. By calling it insurance, the administration was able to raise the premiums by $7 billion in 1972 and avoid a revolt. If you earn $12,000 a year, 8% of your paycheck goes into Social Security. But if your salary is $40,000, less than 2% is taken. It is a pay-as-you-go proposition, with the present workforce supporting the retired population. But then it was never intended to be a sole source of income. Apparently, the assumption with Social Security was that Yankee genius would make up the difference. It hasn't worked out that way for everyone. Retirement is an American invention, and is a way not of time, but of life. It is necessary, if for no other reason, to keep the economy moving by keeping the workers in it moving. But for the record, at 65, you're hardly over the hill. In fact, nothing much happens at that age. Studies indicate that learning capabilities do not drastically drop off, and absenteeism actually lessens. For many American workers today, retirement is not the mental catastrophe it was cracked up to be.
I was glad to go, but yet it was felt kind of bad to think, well, you're not going to be down there with your friends every day and talking to them and things, you know. I just never figured myself as getting old. I don't know. Now, when my father was 40 years old, I remember back when I was a kid, I thought he was an old man. But I don't figure that I'm old. Getting old don't worry me a bit. If I can go with my shoes on, I'll be tickled to death. But the thing that scares the missus and I both is you run into a long spell of sickness after you retire. That can just knock the devil out of money and you and everything else.
The proportion of widows over 75 has risen dramatically, over 30% in the last 10 years. By 2000, it is projected that in America there will be 148 women over 65 for every man. With the average age of widowhood at 56, many women in the United States are facing more than 20 mateless years. That's a long time to crochet.
They're not wanted. They're not needed. They were needed in the past, too. I mean, it wasn't simply sentimentality. It was that they could do things. There weren't any prepared foods, and there weren't any washers and dryers, and they did the canning, and they did the sewing and the dirty work, and often took care of the grandchildren. And with the growth of technological society, they became very dispensable, and we dispensed with them.
This will be hard to swallow. In spite of the fact that you live in a country that gives you shampoo with vitamin E and orange-flavored shaving cream, you are going to age and eventually die. Benjamin Gompertz, a 19th century insurance man, figured out that your chances of dying double every 8 years. But don't worry, those chances do not necessarily increase in proportion to the amount of function lost. In English, that means that you'll be around for a while, even if you're falling apart from birth.
I'm now nearing the end of my journey. I hope I still have some services to render. However that may be, and whatever may befall, I am sure I shall never forget the emotion of this day.
Incidentally, it was Winston Churchill who said that people who abstain from smoking and drinking don't live twice as long. It just seems that way.
Old people have a responsibility to become interesting as they grow older. I think that as we get more like a prune on the outside, we have to get more like a peach on the inside. And we do get ugly when we get old. You know, we sag and we get wrinkles and we get bent and we're unattractive. Even more reason for us to be merry, to be interesting, to be interested, not when children or family come around to whine, complain, give supererogatory advice. I mean, old people tend to be drags that way. And then they wonder why their children or families don't come around. So there's a dual responsibility. But you see, there again, the American culture does not equip people to grow and develop in maturity as they get older. It narcoticizes them with television and with junk and with nonsense and trivia so that their minds don't get richer, their spirits don't get broader. They get very dull and shallow. That's why many men, when they retire and leave their jobs, die. A sad commentary, because that's when they're supposed to do the most interesting living. But they have become functions of people. All they're really interested in is a job, and on weekend parking their butts in front of the TV and watching sports for 12 hours, you see. So when the job is over, and when their eyes are failing and their health is failing, they're shells, they're empty shells. So I think our culture also has a responsibility. You know, Socrates was asked what the meaning of life was, and he said it was practice in dying, which is really a rather good definition, I think. All life, in a sense, is practice in dying. It's learning how to die well, learning how to become in age many of the things you can't become when you're young, and to expand and to be who you ought to be, to drop your pretenses, to drop your need for status, to drop your bigotries, to become as full a person as you can.
In the chair. Yes. Oh, honey, you can't stand up. Yes. Hi.
What you doing?
What?
Grandma. You're Grandma. Yeah. Well, hi, honey. Don't you like Grandma no more? Huh? Would you like the Grandma no more?
3.
Oh,
Sure you do.
Where's that place?
Yeah. Hey. Oh, boy.
Yeah. Hi.
Well, sir, should I say just in plain words, I love them all. I don't care which one it is. Do you know what love is? That you just go out and give your all for that person. I know, because I had over 50 years of it. And that's all we can do, and that's what we should do for our fellow men.
Come on, let me catch you. Use the door. We got it.
I am really accepted. I don't know, I just felt I was accepted. I felt, well, there was something I could do yet, see? I wasn't on the outside. You know, elderly people can not be wanted. Well, now it's coming to the place where they are going to be more wanted. If the elderly person wants to be wanted, you've got to want to be wanted, don't you know?